Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF-accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hey there. So as we get into today's session, I noticed that I want to say today's session. It's such a habit because I run client sessions. So I'll say, what would you like to focus on for today's session and things like that. As we get into today's podcast episode, big announcement. If you didn't catch it in last week's episode, I have a new course. It's called Undercurrents, UNDERCURRENTS, and it is a coaching course to explore the depths. It is an advanced ICF-approved course for continuing coach education. You'll get 30 some odd hours of continuing coach education, and it's all about uncovering the unseen dynamics that block client change and how you can guide clients into transformation that really lasts. It's going to include ethics modules to fulfill that requirement if you're renewing your ICF credential, a coaching competency review, but the real bones of the course are about going deeper, getting into the client's somatic experience, getting into what I call the tension of the opposites. When a client wants one thing, but they are doing everything completely the opposite of what they want. It gets into the inner kid, the client's relationship to pleasure, to power, the client's understanding of what the somatic signals in their body are trying to tell them. And this is a course that is all for you about how you can do this work with your clients. And so if you want to learn more about that course, head over to teamclcc.com. You'll see the logo for it on the Team CLCC website. In the last Craft of Coaching episode, I got into how it is that you cannot push a client farther than they are willing to go. And I talked about identity threat as a major component of that, of why clients know that they want to change and then don't change. Today, I want to get into what to do about that identity threat issue. How do we release attachment to coaching outcomes? How do we coach a client when the client is rejecting something because it threatens their identity? It's something that's so easy to miss in coaching because you're trained to listen for beliefs and patterns. You're not necessarily always trained to spot what's underneath them. This is a major component of what we get into in the CLCC program. How do you look at the narrative or story that's underneath what the client is saying? But not everybody is getting this lesson. And so let's go a little deeper. This episode's about those identity level moments in coaching. The resistance isn't just about I'm an uncoachable client, which in the last episode I talked about how I don't resonate with that term. I don't think that it's very helpful for the client. We really want to have empathy and understanding instead of labeling a client as being uncoachable, because really fear of failure, fear of change is about protecting the self. There are moments in a coaching session when if you and a client are doing deep work, you hit a nerve. You offer a reflection, you ask a question that on the surface seems really reasonable, but then you notice that the client's reaction is disproportionate. Most often, it's going to look like shutting down. Other times, it'll look like deflecting. They might not agree with you, actually. They might, and that's a good thing if they say, hey, that doesn't feel true for me. I don't see it that way. That's healthy disagreement. Sometimes, however, these are signals that you've actually said something that threatens their identity, meaning the story, the narrative, the way they see themselves that they've built to survive. And if you don't recognize that, then you potentially fracture the trust and rapport that is at the center of a productive coaching relationship. And in fact, doubling down with tough love, or what people call tough love, is not helpful. In CLCC, we say that if the love has to be tough, it probably ain't love. Or in those moments, coaches will retreat. They'll go, oh, okay, I've touched a nerve, so I better, don't want to touch that again. But that could be pandering to a pattern that the client very much needed you to name and very much needs to explore. So let's get into why these moments can be so tension-filled. I'm going to name it. Identity is a survival strategy. And we all have identities that we want to protect. A client who grew up needing to be the strong one will push back very hard on any reflection that implies vulnerability. I mean, I gotta say, as somebody who's built an entire platform talking about courage and fear, do you have any idea from a marketing perspective how challenging it can be to just get people to admit that they're afraid? I have literally walked into speaking engagements, corporate environments where I'm running a workshop. I start talking about the very normal experience of fear. Someone raises their hand and they say, well, I don't feel afraid. Like in front of the entire group, they're basically saying, lady, what you're trying to say here doesn't apply to me at all. Maybe it applies to all these other people who are weak, who get afraid, but I don't get afraid. Those are challenging moments. There are times where a client has built their entire value on being a people pleaser. And when you push back and start noting the ways that they could do things differently, they are so pissed. This happens a lot with moms. I got to tell you, until I became a mom, I always wondered when I would have those moments where we'd talk about in a session like, well, you don't have to be the one to take your kid to the once a week group play session that, you really, really like. You don't have to be the only one taking your kid to that session. Well, no, I have to be the one. Why do you have to be the one? If we play with that, they would get very angry at me. And before I became a mom myself, I would honestly, in those moments, pull back a little bit and go, oh, okay. And my mentality at the time was, I'm not a mom. What do I know? Maybe they really do have to be the one. I got to tell you, I'm a mom now. You do not have to be the one. I know. Some people are probably listening to this and going, how dare you say that? Of course I need to be the one. I'm his mother. I'm her mother. Well, yeah, you are. And you don't have to be the only one carrying everything. And even just in that statement, I'm the mother, you can hear the identity in that somebody is very, very attached to. And these are the types of things that you're going to learn to look for and listen for in the Undercurrents course, because these identity threat responses are not necessarily a resistance to coaching. They're a signal from the client saying, I don't feel safe. So how do we slow down and go deeper? And you'll always know that a client is experiencing identity threat when they become emotionally dysregulated in response to something you've said, tears, shutting down anger. I mentioned that. They start performing or intellectualizing. Intellectualizing is another big one. They interrupt to argue or prove you wrong. There's this debate dynamic that will enter the session. Or they go vague and start shifting the topic. Well, that's not really what I wanted to talk about in today's session anyway. And these are really challenging moments because you want to be client-led. And if a client is trying to deflect by going, well, I don't even know why I talked about that. That's not what I wanted to talk about in the session anyway. It's like, I know as coach, we just hit on something important. And instead of avoiding it, there's an opportunity here to get curious. Not to say to your client, well, look, why are you resisting? But rather, can we just take a beat? How are you feeling? Is there something about this question that feels unsafe or disorienting? This is the moment where safety can really be built. Trust and safety with your client can really be built. And I want to be really real that there are times when a client rejects a reflection or isn't interested in an insight that you're trying to help them arrive at, and it can feel triggering for you as a coach. You might feel misunderstood or devalued, in some cases even disrespected. And certainly if a client is truly being disrespectful, that is an entirely different ball of wax. That is a, hold on, we got to pause because I'm not open to being called names in a session, for instance. But assuming that it's just you recognizing I'm feeling misunderstood or devalued or disrespected, this isn't about you as the coach. Again, let's get back to that client-centered perspective. It's about what the client needs in order to feel safe enough to see something differently. So what do you say in those moments? Well, this is an opportunity to deepen the relationship. You can say things like, okay, I totally hear what you're having to say. You don't have to agree. I'm wondering, though, so that I can have clarity, what felt off about what I said? You could also invite them to explore it a bit more. Seems like some stuff came up when I asked that question. Would you feel okay staying with this just a beat longer? Or naming the fact that the response that's happening is really normal. Sometimes when we're brushing up against patterns, it feels threatening. Do you notice anything like that here? It's curiosity. It's inviting self-reflection. It's showing your client, I'm not here to win. I'm not trying to win an argument. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm here to partner. Let's say then that the client moves through some of that resistance and they say, okay, I'm willing to look at this a little more deeply. Okay, here we go. Coaching work is going into another level, right? It's not just, oh, you've had an insight. Now we take action around it. It's how do we actually do identity work? Well, in doing identity work so that the client feels stronger, safer, has more capacity to actually stretch in the direction of what they want, you're not dismantling old identities so much as you're building up the new identity. You're expanding the client's existing identity. When a client says, well, that's not me in some way, shape, or form, they're often defending a version of themselves that has worked until now. It has worked for someone to say, but I'm the mother, which is why I have to do everything and sacrifice my own dreams, and I can't find anyone else to help, and I'm not going to ask my partner to help, and I'm not going to pull back on how many activities my kid is enrolled in, and I'm not going to allow the laundry to be unfolded, because if I do all that, who am I? It's scary to be in that space. Being the mother really works for them, or being the high achiever, or being the person who's married, or being, whatever that identity is. It has served a purpose for that client. Your job as a coach is to hold up the mirror with compassion, to be the person suggesting that just maybe more is possible, and that the choice is not between safety and growth, that they can actually be safe while they grow. You need to learn how to track for identity threat, how to coach within it instead of tiptoeing around it, how to rebuild safety and help your client build an expanded identity so that they start shifting out of that self-protection mode and into, I am willing to believe that I can trust myself here. So here's where you can start with this. The next time a client rejects something within a session with some kind of intensity, and intensity looks different for clients. Like I said, I've mentioned people just spacing out and shutting down as one way that they respond to things. I've also mentioned that they might get angry, okay? When those moments happen, ask yourself, is this about the coaching or is this about identity and who this person has been in order to survive? Because when you see identity threat for what it is, you stop trying to convince and you start holding space for the most courageous kind of transformation. This is the space where clients go, when they look back on the trajectory of their entire coaching relationship with you, they go, this was the moment things changed. And that is what real coaching is all about. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.